All right, Venezuela has taken yet another draconian step towards increasing centralization. Maduro is doing exactly the wrong thing. If you have a problem in a very deeply state controlled economy, the proper solution is to cut your losses, deregulate things, free things up for the private market, free things up for private individuals, hopefully get some foreign investment going if you're not able to invest in them centrally, and then get people back to work, get things produced again. Maduro has chosen the all important communist tactic, and he's looking more now almost like a communist than he is a socialist, which is pretty funny, of simply forced labor. Forced labor tends not to be used except in times of great stress, especially in a nation that pretends to be a representative democracy as Venezuela does. Of course, it's not. Their elections are obviously rigged. The president there has basically ignored the constitution that his own party actually agreed upon in the first place, has ignored the courts, has ignored the will of what they have as a sort of congressional system, their legislature, so to speak. And now they're saying, oh, well, in order to produce more food so people can eat, we're going to force people to work in the fields. Now, they're saying it can be up to 60 days that the state can force a person to work the farm fields, so to speak. Now, most of these people who would be forced to work the fields probably don't know anything about farming, so I don't know how effective it would be in the first place. Secondly, if a person is doing brute labor out in a field, they also need a higher caloric intake than if they're just sort of on the socialist dole and sitting at home because they only work 2 days a week because there's nothing else to do, because the economy has stalled out. This is exactly the wrong thing that Maduro could possibly do. It's the worst possible solution, so-called, to the problem that he could formulate. To the point at which Venezuela is beginning to eerily resemble Pol Pot's Cambodia, or something like that. The absolute worst, the dregs of communism. Again, with forced labor and with a generally inefficient system of agrarian productivity in which individuals that didn't necessarily know how to produce anything were forced to try to produce crops, in which the bureaus in charge of overseeing things more regionally would repeatedly lie about how much was being produced in order not to cause a ruckus with Pol Pot or with his higher-ups, his inner circle. That could be what Venezuela devolves into. It is very sad that a nation that has the largest proven oil reserves on the face of the earth, a climate that is suitable for virtually any crop, a large swath of Venezuela is not nothing but humid, rainy, tropical rainforest. A large swath of it is relatively temperate year-round and can grow a great number of crops. They have good land. They have a prime location. They're fairly close to the Panama Canal. It should be easy for them to trade through the Pacific, not just the Atlantic, in all of the goods that they can produce. But because they were so fixated on oil, and because they drained away 99% of the productivity for welfare handouts to spur on human development rather than infrastructural development, they never invested fully in modern farming either. And so now you have the beginning of the second wave of the spiraling problem. They never invested in their oil infrastructure because they were too busy paying for people's handouts to fatten them up, to make them reliant upon the government so they could have more power. And this is what people like Sanders want to do here in the United States, by the way. It's step by step. It's a trickle. It's a very slow process in a nation like this, where we haven't had really more than the rudiments of socialism in the past for the most part. In Venezuela, it was much more quick. So the first problem is they never invested in their main source of income, leaving it inefficient. Then, when that commodity collapsed, when the oil prices collapsed and they went deep into the red, the other problem is that what they could have used as a fallback, which is farming, they can't really do that effectively either. They have to literally force people who don't know anything about farming to farm because it's not profitable. People have no incentive to do harder labor when they can do easier labor because, of course, they're not getting anything out of their extra labor. They're being fed the same amount either way, so who gives a fuck? Who would want to go out and plow up the dirt 10 hours a day when you can sit in an office chair and you're getting exactly the same thing back out of it? And the government never invested in, if you're going to have a centrally planned system, it's left up to the government and its bureaus to invest in expanding any infrastructure, to invest in better technology or something akin to it for your agricultural sector, not just your energy extraction, not just the oil. Unfortunately, the government of Venezuela, in its stupidity, its haste to increase the literacy rate and to increase the quality of life very temporarily for people by giving them microwaves and dishwashers, never bothered to invest in these more rudimentary things. Venezuela would be a shining example of a first world nation with a high degree of advancement if they had spent the majority of the money that they were making from that centralized oil on building infrastructure and making things more and more efficient. They could have diversified their economy and they wouldn't be having these problems. They may be suffering setbacks at the moment because of the oil price collapse, but they would not be on the brink of actual nation is collapsing mode as we speak. But Maduro's not going to change his mind. He has become, like Erdogan, like Kim Jong-un, like the leadership of Turkmenistan and many other places in the world, or Mugabe, or anybody like that, he has become a tin-horn dictator. Essentially an oligarch, of course. He doesn't have singular power. He shares it with his military staff. He shares it with the heads of the bureaus. But ultimately, he's garnering more and more for himself, and the people of Venezuela are starving more and more. They're running low on supplies more and more, and now the only thing he can turn to, because he refuses to join modernity and actually understand that you need at least the rudiments of a free market in order to have a functioning economy, unless you've already diversified, in which case you can last for a longer period of time under outright socialism and central planning. Instead of doing that, he's going in the opposite direction, saying, oh, we'll just force people to work. I'm sure that's a great idea. They're already starving. I'm sure they can take 10-hour shifts plowing manually out in the fields. Sounds like a great idea. That's about all. Peace out.